So email has been a source of stress for me for quite a while, and I finally fixed it. So I wanted to share what I've changed. So I used to, as everyone in my circles at least seems to recommend to do, I used to batch my emails, batch my responding to the emails. So I tried, a certain time of the day I would sit down and do my email, usually at the end of the day. I would try maybe certain days I would dedicate a chunk of time to doing that, and then other days less so. All kinds of variations of that idea I've tried for quite a while. Yet email has been a source of stress for me for a long time, despite all of that. And as I found out recently, it's because of all of that. So for one of the issues I had was that I would have a certain batching schedule, but every once in a while, circumstances would come up, and I'd have to drop a batch and take up that slack later. And what that would do was create a loop where every time I open my inbox, there's more there to deal with and more stress, and so that would create a negative reinforcement. So I would just avoid it, and it's embarrassing, but for certain non-urgent customer requests, sorry, I have our cat, one of our two cats. For non-urgent customer requests, I would sometimes respond with months later, at the worst of times. Now, I've been able to improve my response rate despite, even through crises. So there was a major bug, one of the biggest bugs that I've experienced in quite a while, a couple of weeks ago. Took me a few days to fix, and throughout that, we also had my family member go into hospital multiple times, and we were spending a lot of time there. Despite all of that, I was still able to stay on top of things and not be stressed about it. So how am I doing things now? Quite simply, apart from when I'm programming, which is a max of 4 hours of focused, concentrated time a day, usually, I get notified when I get an email. I get a ping, and I respond immediately if at all possible. Now, maybe some of you do that, and if that's the case, you say, duh, that's just the way it works. But so much of what I've read around email says that that's just absolutely the wrong way to do things. Getting notified interrupts your flow. Yes, it does, but you can always block off certain times to not be interrupted, and then the rest of the time you handle things as they come. Why that's better, I found, is it takes me the same amount of time, first of all, to respond immediately as it does to respond later. But the experience for the user is much, much better. And not only is the experience better, but also I'm able to sometimes get a response to my questions so that we can resolve the issue more quickly. Doing it this way has also removed that negative loop where I'm not afraid to open my inbox because there's almost always nothing in there. If I do leave things, in the morning, sometimes I'll check it. Sometimes I'll work first and then I check it. But that negative reinforcement is no longer there. So I'm willing to check it whenever and just deal with things, and it's not an issue. Now, I'm very aware of being present with my family and with my son, and I spend a lot of time with him and with them. And I didn't want this, and I think this was a central fear that I had, and it turned out not to be the case. The central fear that I had was that I would be constantly on my phone and not present with him. But what I didn't count on was realizing how much psychic load was taken up by the thought and fear of unanswered emails that I had sitting in my inbox when I was doing batching. That was there, and it was making me less present. Whereas now, we might be at the park, and usually, if I'm playing with him, in the middle of playing, I'm not going to stop and, check my phone. But our son is very aware of of the fact that we have customers, of the fact that we're trying to help people. And I actually use it as a teaching opportunity to involve him. Like if we're at home, I'll bring him to the computer and be like, oh, a customer is having problems. And I found it's actually sometimes when it's a bug, I'm able to explain the bug to him, and that's useful for me to think things through, and it gives him an understanding of how computers and the internet works at a rough level. He's only 4.5. But the removal of that psychic drain was an unexpected benefit. So I find I am able to be more present, despite the fact that every once in a while I have to take a couple minutes or less, because usually the first email that I get on a certain subject, my response is usually asking more questions if it's a bug, or otherwise it's something that I can answer right away, and I do so. Anyway, the interesting question to me is, why haven't I tried this before? It's such a simple solution, and it's made my life so much better, and it's removed an entire source of stress for me and made my customers' lives better, and just made things better across the board. I've tried so many variations of the batching approach, but it never occurred to me to not batch my email. So I want to thank Paul Akers for his video on how he handles email, and all of his other videos, which I'll link to and recommend highly. But that one in particular made me open my mind to the idea of trying it, and it's been great so far. So again, why didn't I try this before? The content that I've read on the subject, the way it was presented made it so that it just kind of closed my mind to alternatives. Most of the time, it was presenting things in roughly the following way. The masses are constantly bombarded by interruptions, and you as a smart individual should not do the same thing. Don't fall prey to this Pavlovian, being on your phone thing. Limit that to a certain window of time, and be productive the rest of the time. Now, I agree with many of those points. I do think that people are on their phones too often, but I'm trying to separate I'm going to choose to go on my phone and check something that's of no value to others, versus I'm responding to somebody who needs my help and that I'm the one to help them. That's different. Now, the other aspect of why I didn't try is that the amount of content out there on email management is often, it's going to be written by people who have trouble or have had trouble with email, and they're working through ways to get around that and solve that problem. But nobody's going to write about, I do things, I just check my phone and respond right away, and that's not been an issue for me. So the amount of content out there on email management is going to be skewed towards people who have trouble or who find it a problem. People who don't find it a problem aren't going to be writing about it. So that's just a little, for me, it's been a big change in my life, but it's such a simple thing, and I'm always looking for the little simple ways to improve how I work and how I live, and so I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope this video and the one I'm going to link to can open your mind to trying this if it's something that you find you struggle with. If you struggle with email and you're currently batching it at some level, or starring things to respond later, and doing all kinds of gymnastics with your email, try it. Try just responding right away. When you read it, you respond. Obviously, you can have windows of time where you don't do that, but most people work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and there's a limit to how much of that can be full focus concentration. If you are in a position to help other people by responding, then do so as quickly as you can. All right, so that's it from me. If you have any comments, questions, you know what to do. See ya.